I think the 1967 Doctor Who story The Moonbase is one of the great underrated classic Doctor Who stories. Only 2 episodes of the story still exist, and I first saw those 2 episodes when I was 12 years old. They'd been released on VHS video as Cybermen the Early Years in July 1992. Many black and white Doctor Who stories survived only in fragments, with 1 or 2 episodes of a multi-part story still existing in the BBC archives. So the BBC released several VHS tapes combining these remaining episodes from incomplete stories. The Troughton Years had released 3 single episodes. Episode 2 of The Abominable Snowmen, Episode 3 of The Enemy of the World, and Episode 2 of The Space Pirates. In all 3 cases, this felt like a limited glimpse into 3 missing stories, and there was a real sense that the rest of the story was missing. Cybermen the Early Years contained the 2 surviving episodes of The Moonbase, and the 2 surviving episodes of the 6-part story The Wheel in Space. In both cases, we got an episode from the middle of the story which featured escalating intrigue about the threat of the Cybermen, and the concluding episode which featured the final base under siege element of the story. In both cases, it felt to me that I'd got just enough of the story to make it feel like I wasn't simply watching isolated episodes. Subsequently, for both stories, I've been able to listen to complete audios, viewed telesnap reconstructions, and in the case of the Moonbase, the missing episodes have been animated in full. But having accessed these stories in more complete form, I now know for sure what I suspected back in 1992, that the episodes we have are actually the 2 best episodes of those stories, which is quite a nice stroke of luck. And so my 12-year-old self watched the Moonbase episodes. The Moonbase is classic Doctor Who's truest base under siege story. The Troughton era of Doctor Who is remembered for featuring many base under siege stories, but the Moonbase is base under siege in its truest form. Fury from the Deep has a seaweed monster attacking a North Sea gas rig, and the Seeds of Death has the Moonbase captured by ice warriors. But the Moonbase features a moon base literally besieged by the Cybermen, with the whole of episode 4 being about the characters of the story literally trapped inside that base, with the Cybermen trying to get in to take over. The only other classic Doctor Who story which features the base under siege premise so literally is Warriors of the Deep, and the less said about that story the better. Link in the description. There's so much to love about the Moonbase. The base under siege is done well, and you really do get a feeling of tension with this small group of people being under attack from the Cybermen.
Did your men search in here? No.
But there's nowhere in here they could hide.
It also combines science fiction and horror very effectively, with the disease with which the Cybermen infect the base.
Don't drink that! It's the sugar! Don't you see? That's why the disease doesn't affect everyone. It's the sugar. Not everyone takes it.
It's a large infective agent that only attacks the nerves. That's why the patients have got these lines on their faces and their hands. It follows the course of the nerves under the skin.
A scary and creepy image which in 1992 my dad told me he had remembered from watching it live on BBC One a quarter of a century earlier. Since I can now see episode 1 in various forms, I can see that it has some lovely scenes early on when there's a great sense of amazement from Ben and Polly as to how they're actually on the moon and what it's like to experience the moon's weaker gravity. This, of course, being a couple of years before Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did it for real. It's also the first Doctor Who story to feature an optical effect.
What happened?
Just deflected over the dome.
The gravitron deflected it. The force field.
Yes, and that gives me an idea.
And the gravitron, which controls the Earth's weather.
Start moving the probe down.
the Cybermen!
And the Cybermen are genuinely scary and creepy throughout. Especially their voices.
Moonbase, you are surrounded. All resistance is useless. They have blocked up our way into the base.
And the Cybermen costumes are a huge improvement on the cloth faces of their first appearance in the 10th planet.
Our scientists and doctors devised spare parts for our bodies until we could be almost completely replaced.
But one thing that really stood out about the Moonbase to my 12-year-old self was the boots worn by the Cybermen. Obviously the Cybermen were portrayed by actors in costumes, and obviously the footwear will be part of those costumes. 2 decades later, for the production of the 1988 story Silver Nemesis, the actors playing Cybermen were wearing a costume which hid the footwear the actors were wearing. But a lot of the classic Cybermen stories had the Cybermen wearing various types of boots sprayed silver.
We are called Cybermen.
But you will have a much closer view.
Yet the Moonbase featured the Cybermen wearing lace-up boots rather than slip-on boots. It's possible to make an in-universe explanation for their having lace-up boots, if you accept that what you see of the Cybermen is an outer covering for the cybernetically enhanced creature underneath.
This is what the Cybermen do to you.
Although I suspect most of the viewing public who noticed the Cybermen wearing lace-up boots were more likely to have a similar reaction to my 12-year-old self and see it as a giveaway that they are actors in costumes. It must be remembered that standard definition television used to hide a lot of the shabbiness of television sets and costumes, unlike the HD and 4K productions of today. And it's not like the camera is going to zoom in on the Cybermen footwear, except that the Moonbase is the one story which, having put the Cybermen in lace-up boots, seemed to go out of its way to emphasise it, and even unnecessarily draw attention to it in the script and the finished programmes. Episode 4 starts with an army of Cybermen walking across the surface of the moon, coming to besiege the base. A lovely close-up of the Cybermen walking across the moon's dust-covered surface, but which highlights the lace-up boots. The end of episode 2 has a reveal that a Cyberman is hiding in the medical bay.
Did your men search in here? No.
There's nowhere in here they could hide.
And the way our characters discover that is that they recognise the Cyberman's boots sticking out from under the bed sheets.
Oh no.
And earlier in episode 2, the Doctor is examining items on the base to see if he can find traces of the virus.
Well, what can we do to help? I shall need to examine everything. Clothes, boots, food, towels, soap, everything.
One of the samples he collects from a member of the Moonbase personnel is his boot. And when the Doctor collects this boot, he holds it right in front of the camera, as if to say, "Hey everyone, are you seeing what I'm seeing? This boot looks awfully Cyberman-like, doesn't it?" 12-year-old me noticed the way the Doctor emphasises the silver boot collected from the Moonbase operator, and combined with the Cybermen hidden beneath the sheets on the medical bed and the emphasis on the boots, I wondered if this was a sign that something was slowly turning the base personnel into Cybermen. In preparation for this video, I checked to see if what the Cybermen were wearing technically qualified as a boot or a shoe, and I posted a screenshot to ChatGPT and asked it the question. Yes, I used the supercomputer that is ChatGPT's server to ask about the boot an actor was wearing in a nearly 60-year-old television programme. But without asking it, ChatGPT made the same possible connection between the boots worn by the Cybermen and those worn by the base personnel, and the possible implications of that. So this wasn't just my 12-year-old self overthinking this. Modern AI has confirmed the logic. Until the 1980s, the Cybermen costumes were changed every time Doctor Who gave us a new Cyberman story. The only exception to this was from the Moonbase to the next Cyberman story, The Tomb of the Cybermen. where the cyber costumes were identical apart from one minor detail. The exposure of laced-up boots in the Moonbase was obviously something the production team felt they would correct in their next appearance. Or perhaps the Cybermen themselves got sick of tying their laces.